Perfect. Well, thanks, Alan, for allowing me to be back on and talk about this. To add to what you said about we don't know where the truth really lies, it's somewhere in the no man's land. Um, I just want to add to that you know one of the reasons why the Nazis were so successful in World War II, and it was I think it was Goebbels who declared that during the Nuremberg trials is if you tell a lie often enough, the people will eventually just accept it as the truth and go with it. And I think that's where this so-called country has been at for the past many, many decades. Um, so today I want to share some more information that should really be able to nail some facts down. Now, the documentary film Canada the Illusion, when I released it last year in December, since then it has led to lots of discussion, and that's exactly what we want. That's wonderful that people really talk about it. Everyone can have an opinion, everyone can have thoughts, and together we will find the truth. That's how it goes. It's not one person that tells you what it is. We all have to do it. So the film, it already exposed a lot of the immense fraud that was committed since 1867. Now, the reason I'm responding today is because there were two presentations on May 2nd and May 9th. And in those presentations, most of the assertions made were actually incorrect. But thanks to that presenter, I did more digging, and I'm here today to show those crucial facts that are often overlooked. To give you a summary of what we're going to talk about today is that the sovereign right to govern always originates in the ownership of land. You can't say you have executive authority when you don't own the land. That's not how it works. And prior to 1660, the king was an absolute monarch. But since 1660, the king alone has had no power. He can only do things by and with the advice and consent of the Privy Council. And those words are often, always, I think always written in the documents, by and with the advice and consent of the Privy Council. So the title to land is the key to any executive authority. And I will show today that there's no doubt that the Crown and Chancery owned the land. And there's also no doubt then that what we know as Canada became sovereign in 1931. And just to give full transparency at the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to provide all of this as a PDF to people, all the references, all the links are all provided. Links to source documents, links to government websites where you can find the source documents, and then really people, please read and connect the dots yourself that I'm showing today. So let's look at some of the history that is often overlooked, and people think it might not be relevant. Sometime in the 16th century, Thomas Cromwell, a lawyer and chief minister under Henry VIII, was a key figure in establishing the Royal Council. It was later called the Privy Council. In 1622, the Privy Council of England established what's called the Lords of Trade and Plantations. And at first, that sounds like just some fancy little committee that might deal with trade and nothing else, but this is really important. In 1625, Charles I ascended the throne, and he was not a good king. He seized gold from the people. He called it a forced loan. He basically stole the people's gold and wasted it on his lifestyle. So people weren't happy with him, and during the English Civil Wars, he was arrested, tried, and executed in 1649. At that time, the monarchy, the House of Lords, and the Privy Council were abolished and replaced with the Republic, and the House of Commons instituted a Council of State to execute their laws. Oliver Cromwell, who was really more of the instigator with the army to go against the monarchy in the Civil Wars, he ruled as a Lord Protector of the Council of State. That became the Protector's Privy Council, and Oliver Cromwell also had significant ties to the wealthy merchants of the City of London. Now, when Charles I took the people's gold and never repaid it, they started putting their gold with the merchants inside the City of London. And that will become very important why they did that. Now, in 1659, Cromwell died, the council was abolished. In 1660, Charles II was invited back to restore the British monarchy, but that was a big change. The parliament really limited the royal power then. The king alone had no more power. Everything had to be done with the advice of Parliament. Charles II also restored the Royal Privy Council. He lived a very glamorous lifestyle, again, by borrowing money that he couldn't repay. So in 1694, the Bank of England was founded, and it was founded because Charles II didn't repay the debts that he owed to the goldsmiths. The Bank of England is situated in the City of London, and the City of London, which goes back to Roman times, is exempt from any royal interference. Now, here's something that a lot of people might not know, but it's very important to make the distinction that the crown, as we think, is not the royal family, and it is not the British monarchy. The crown is a private corporation of London. It is a council of 12 members of the corporation, and the crown gathered, from what I could gather with the research I've done, the crown appears to represent the City of London, the wealthy merchants inside the City of London, which today I guess people call the international bankers. Crown land is land that is owned by the crown, and that's the crown and chancery, as we will see. The title to land was awarded in the form of a crown grant. A crown grant is a latter's patent that was signed by the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor reports to the governor general. It was also signed by the Deputy Commissioner of Lands and Works. I have a copy, a certified copy of the original crown grant from 1901 for my property here that I could show that it is signed, that it's a lattice patent and signed by the governor, the lieutenant governor. The Crown and Chancery, which was part of the Court and Chancery, dealt with the administration of royal lands or the governance of territories under the Crown. The Privy Council, let's talk about that. Privy is derived from the French word privé, and that means private or secret, so it's a secret council. It advised the monarch. It had also the power to issue executive orders. Members were senior figures from Parliament, judges, diplomats, and also military leaders. Under Henry VIII, it was able to circumvent Parliament in the courts by pure proclamation. It can issue orders of council without the approval of the monarch. And the Cabinet of the United Kingdom is the executive committee of the Privy Council. It established the Lords of Trade and Plantations, as we said, to manage the land of the colonies. Now, that Board of Trade, it used to be called the Lords of Trade and Plantations and the Board of Trade and Plantations. As we said, it was established by the Privy Council in 1622. It was revived in 1660 after the English Civil Wars. It received its authority from the Crown and Chancery. In 1760, George III surrendered the management of Crown lands to Parliament. And remember, the Cabinet of the United Kingdom is the executive committee of the Privy Council, and the Privy Council had ties to the City of London, the Crown. In 1782, the Crown and Chancery granted this authority to the Colonial Office. And in 1786, an order in council re-established this committee. In 1861, it was renamed the Board of Trade. It managed the land of the colonies. The ultimate jurisdiction of the Board of Trade was held by the Secretary of State and the Privy Council. So who was the Secretary of State? Well, that was the person who administered the affairs of the Crown and Chancery and the retention of the colony. But he had no executive authority within the colony itself. That executive authority, the government within the colony, was exercised by the governor. The governors received their authority from the Crown and Chancery, as will be shown. For the colonies, they were appointed on the advice of the Secretary of State. Now, the Crown and Chancery was the legal and executive power of the Crown. The Crown Office in Chancery is formally known as the Lord Chancellor's Department, and the permanent secretary is known as the Clerk of the Crown and Chancery. The Lord Chancellor is also a member of the Privy Council. Maybe you're starting to see how this all works here, how it's all connected. The Lord Chancellor holds custody of the Great Seal of the Realm. That's confirmed by the Great Seal Act from 1884. Any letters patent require the Great Seal of the Realm. Any royal proclamations also require the Great Seal of the Realm. The sealing of documents was usually performed under supervision of the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Justice, which is the clerk of the Crown and Chancery. He is also the head of the Crown Office. The governors, later referred to as governors general, they receive their authority only from the Crown and Chancery, from nobody else. Neither the king nor any member of the House of Commons or the House of Lords is allowed to interfere in this process. Not at all. After the governor is appointed and the letters patent are attested by the Crown and Chancery, then the governor is presented to the king as a formality to receive some letters of instruction. Now, to put all of this together, I created a flowchart, which I will show in a minute. What I discovered with the facts when I did a deep dive on this is that I discovered proof that the executive government exercised by the Governor General alone was actually established in 1763. And those are all documents, source documents that I can provide and show, and they're referenced in the references at the end. So the very first letters patent were issued to General James Murray in 1763 for the province of Quebec. They are documented as Sessional Paper number 18 in the official archives for the Dominion of Canada, which you can get on the government website. These letters patent were issued by York and York, who were the attorneys for the Lords of Trade and Plantations. When you look at these letters patent, they clearly state on there that it's the constitution of the government. It's a very lengthy letters patent. It goes into very detail about this whole constitution of the government. Now, where this comes in important is when you look at the B&A Act 1867, which some people believe is our constitution. Section 6 of that act defined the province of Quebec as the province of Lower Canada. So it pulled Quebec, which was already established in 1763, into the B&A Act. Then in Section 12 of the B&A Act, it states that all powers, authority, and functions which are at the Union vested in or exercisable by the respective governors of those provinces or by those governors individually shall, in relation to the government of Canada, be vested in and exercisable by the Governor General. So what this does, it took the original letters patent from 1763, which constituted the government, and it made those applicable as a continuance of executive government to every province in the Dominion of Canada. So Canada could not have two central governments. That doesn't work. The Governor General was already constituted as the executive government in 1763. And when you look at the Governor General's Act, that actually confirms that he is the government of Canada. The Queen isn't the government of Canada. The B&A Act did not constitute the Dominion government because this was already done in 1763. The B&A Act simply ensured that whatever was done in 1763 now applied to the whole Dominion, all of the provinces that were united as one colony. The B&A Act only strengthened the dictatorship of the Governor General. So in that sense, Section 9 of the B&A Act that states that the Queen has the executive power and authority, it is meaningless because since 1660, the monarch has had no absolute power. So I believe Section 9 was likely put in to simply deceive the colonists and distract from the fact that the Governor General actually had dictatorship and that it was continued to be a dictatorship. Now, as I said, I put this into a flowchart, and this flowchart applies to anywhere after 1660 until 1931. Now, I want to make sure that people know it doesn't show everything that belongs to the Crown. This chart only shows key parts that refer to land management and land ownership and executive government. Other things that are under the Crown simply don't apply to what we're talking about today. So under the Crown, you have the legal and executive government, and you have the monarch. Those are not the same. The monarch has no impact on the legal and executive government. Under the legal and executive government, you have the Crown Office in Chancery, or the Court in Chancery, and we have the Privy Council. Now, the Privy Council advises the monarch. The monarch does everything only with advice and consent of the Privy Council, as is stated in any document. The Crown Office in Chancery administered the lands and governance of territories. Under the Crown Office, you have the Lord Chancellor and the Secretary of State. The Privy Council in 1622 established the Lords of Trade and Plantations to manage trade and foreign plantations. The Crown and Chancery granted the authority to the Lords of Trade and Plantations. The jurisdiction was held by the Privy Council and the Secretary of State. The Lords of Trade and Plantations issued the first letters patent ever in 1763, called Sessional Paper No. 18, to Governor James Murray to establish the executive government within the colony called the Province of Quebec. At least since 1885 and until 1931, letters patent to appoint governors general were issued by the Crown and Chancery through the Clerk of the Crown and Chancery, who oversaw the use of the Great Seal, drafted letters patent and other documents. The Lord Chancellor holds custody of the Great Seal of the realm, and remember, that seal is mandatory to be applied on letters patent. It requires the Great Seal to be official. So these letters patent form the executive government within the colony. And this is where the B&A Act came in. 1763 for the province of Quebec, they wanted to make sure that these letters patent, this executive government, continues for the colonies. So that's how Section 6 and 12 of the B&A Act come in. At no point during this time did the monarch have any absolute power to appoint anyone or have any executive government in any of the colonies. So once the Governor General is appointed and the letters patent are signed, that's when this Governor General is simply presented to the monarch. The monarch gives him some papers that tell him how he should run the colony. But the monarch does not appoint the governor, and the governor does not report to the monarch. Again, I will make this available for everyone to see. It's a document that, yes, I invested a ton of time. I don't charge any money for this, so I want people to know the truth. That's why I'm giving this all out. I'm not stating that this is 100% absolutely correct. Maybe there is something that I missed, and if people discover that, by all means, I'm happy to modify this. I'm happy to look into it. But this is what I found out based on looking at source documents. Now, there are two corrections in the film that were pointed out by the presenter on May 2nd and May 9th. And yes, those are corrections. However, they don't change any of the facts or the conclusions in any way. And here's why. It is correct that the B&A Act 1867 did not die with Queen Victoria in 1901. That was an oversight because I wasn't fully aware of all the facts at the time. So why didn't it die? Well, as we have established, the B&A Act was only to aid and guide the Governor General. It wasn't for the monarch because the monarch did not have absolute power. It was the Crown and Chancery that appoints the Governor General, and it was the Crown and Chancery that owned the land. So the authority of government always originates in the title to land. The executive government continued until 1931 when the land title was lost with the Statute of Westminster, and we'll look at that in detail in a minute. The B&A Act is actually alive today, but it cannot be used by anyone. It could only be used by a duly appointed legitimate Governor General, nobody else. Why? Because the Crown and Chancery appoints the Governor General, nobody else. And the Crown and Chancery lost title to the land. So this correction, in the end, does not change any of the presented facts and the conclusions in any way. And yes, the monarch has in fact been a figurehead for over 364 years. The monarch has had no absolute power for over 364 years. The other correction is with regard to the Letters Patent Revocation Act in 1878. It's correct that it was not called the Letters Patent Revocation Act. It was simply a letters patent. And a letters patent made by the Crown and Chancery to install the office of Governor General permanently. So again, it's a technicality that it wasn't called that, but the contents of the document are the same. The presented facts and the conclusions are not changed by any of this. So I just wanted to speak to those two corrections. A quick note on the Great Seal of the Realm, because it's very important. The Great Seal Act from 1884, it states that no person shall make or prepare any warrant for passing any instrument under the Great Seal of the United Kingdom, or procure any instrument to be passed under the seal otherwise than in manner provided by this Act or the Crown Office Act from 1877. Any person who acts in contravention of this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. So only those who have custody of the Great Seal of the Realm can issue letters patent and royal proclamations. Nobody else. It's the Lord Chancellor that has custody of the Great Seal of the Realm. And it's the Lord Chancellor that represents the Crown Office in Chancery. Absolutely no king or prime minister can issue letters patent or royal proclamations. And a monarch can't do that either. The last legitimate letters patent were issued on March 23rd, 1931. So where does that leave us with the letters patent from 1947? Those letters patent were signed by Prime Minister Mackenzie King and apparently also King George VI. Neither one, as we have just established, had authority to sign these letters patent. King George would have violated the Great Seal Act from 1884. And there's no record of him having done that or having been found guilty of a misdemeanor. So I'm wondering, did Mackenzie King perhaps forge the signature of King George? Was this all an act of insurrection against the Crown and Chancery? You will notice that these letters patent from 1947 do not display the Great Seal of the Realm, and any official letters patent must display that Great Seal of the Realm. They did display the Great Seal of Canada. Now, those are not the same. The Great Seal of Canada was created in 1867, but this seal was always subordinate to the Great Seal of the Realm, and that is confirmed by the Registrar General of Canada and the custodian of the Great Seal of Canada. And there's a reference at the end to the official documentation from the Registrar General of Canada that this seal was always subordinate to the Great Seal of the Realm of Great Britain. The Great Seal of Canada alone has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. So that leads to the conclusion that the 1947 letters patent have been illegitimate and unlawful because they were not issued by any competent authority. So no letters patent could be issued after the Statute of Westminster because the Crown and Chancery had lost the title to the land. That was Section 11. And we'll take a look at that with the Statute of Westminster because this is the most important document in most of the history that we know, that we're aware of. There are three key sections in that statute that really define that we've had complete sovereignty and freedom since 1931. We just haven't been told. And the truth about these facts has been so well hidden and buried in documents that normal people wouldn't go read, that it's really mind-boggling to understand this. So Section 2 of the statute removed colonial law from the Dominion of Canada because the Dominion of Canada was a colony of Great Britain. Section 7 removed colonial law from each province. And anyone who wants to see this in more detail, I would like to refer back to either the PDF of the presentation that you can get on the website, canadaillusionfilm.com, or watch the film. It'll break it down in detail. So this is just a summary. Section 7, subsection 1 is completely redundant because the B&A Act could only be used by a duly appointed, legitimate Governor General. As shown, the executive government was constituted with letters patent in 1763. The monarch has had no executive power since 1660. The B&A Act simply ensured that the powers of the Governor General in 1763 extend to the Governor General for the entire Dominion of Canada. Section 11 removed the Governor General. So since the Governor General was removed, the B&A Act cannot be used by anyone. So this subsection 1 of Section 7 is therefore redundant. The B&A Act can't be excluded from the Statute of Westminster because they're not applicable anymore. And even if they were, they can't be used. It's just completely redundant. Now, why did Section 11 remove the Governor General? It again ties into title to land, ownership of land, because executive government originates in title to land. So who owned the land? It was the Crown and Chancery, as we have shown. Section 11 removed the status of colony. It simply said no dominion shall be a colony any longer. So the Dominion of Canada, when this statute was passed, was not a colony anymore. So you don't have any intermediate status between that of a colony and a sovereign state. If you are not a colony, you are a sovereign state. There's nothing in between. It's either one or the other. You're either possession of some other country or you're not. The rules of succession of the monarch are absolutely not applicable. Why? Because the monarch has not had absolute power since 1660. The monarch does not own the land. So the rules of succession absolutely don't apply. So since the land title was removed, this also then removed the Governor General. Why? Because there was no point for the Crown and Chancery to appoint anyone. When you don't hold title to the land, you can't send a governor to do the executive government anymore. It makes no sense. It's pointless. That is why the last legitimate letters patent were issued prior to the Statute of Westminster in 1931, about 6 months before. After that, none were issued. There's a requirement in the preamble of the statute that states that parliaments of all dominions and the Parliament of the UK must agree on any changes. Well, this requirement does not apply because Section 11 removed the status of dominion. So whoever was still a dominion after the Statute of Westminster, yeah, maybe this requirement in the preamble might apply to them, but Canada, the dominion was dissolved. It had gone, it had disappeared. So again, to reinforce this, there's no intermediate status between that of a colony and that of a sovereign state. Sovereignty and the ownership of land go hand in hand. As we've already established, has been confirmed, confederation has never happened because the provinces had never been sovereign states. They were colonies. Now, for the first time on December 11, 1931, each province of Canada was, for the first time, a sovereign state. This status has not changed since December 11, 1931, because we haven't been told about these facts. No province has held any constitutional convention by the people, and no province has ceded any de jure lawful government by the people. Government continued, likely through the Privy Council of Canada, and Parliament continued, but it was never legitimately voted in by the people. So to give you a bit of a summary, the sovereign right to govern always originates in, nor can it be divested from, the ownership of land. The title to land is the key to executive authority. Prior to 1660, the king was an absolute monarch, the sovereign. But since 1660, the king alone has had no power. He does not own land. He can only do things, and this is what it says in the documents, by and with the advice and consent of the Privy Council. The Crown and Chancery owned the land. The Crown and Chancery lost the title to the land on December 11, 1931. The rules of succession of the monarch do not apply because the monarch does not have title to land. The Statute of Westminster is the only valid law we have in each province and territory. Each province and territory became fully sovereign on December 11, 1931, and therefore any discussion of separation or having referendums is moot because the provinces have never been married. And just to say it at the end, I've always been transparent with all of this. I'm always open to have discussions, to give presentations, to talk about these documents, because there might be things that I have not seen, and I don't proclaim that I know everything. I just connect the dots based on source documents. I dig deep, I find the documents, I read them, I connect them. And if anyone wants to see the documents and discuss further, please get in touch. The website is mentioned, there's an email mentioned. You can find me on Telegram and on X. I'm always happy to be part of any meeting, of any show, or anything really. I got nothing to hide. I don't charge any money for any of this. It's all given out because I want the people to know the truth. And together with us connecting these dots and realizing who really is in charge, and what we simply need to do to realize and exercise the power we have, we're going to have to do it together. Nobody should trust anyone else, what they say or claim. Look at the documents, connect the dots yourself, and set your mind free. And then we do it together from there.